Welcome back to the Business Warroom Podcast. I'm your host, Vinny G. You probably heard it 1,000 times by now. Tariffs are killing us. Other countries have unfair advantages. And the complaints about DOJ investigations into how American tax dollars are being wasted by government programs, it's enough to make anyone frustrated. People are shouting from the rooftops about the drain tariffs are causing in the global economy. But what we often forget to talk about is the real tangible cost of these trade policies on American families, small businesses, and our economy. It's a lot worse than most people realize. Today, we're diving into how cheap foreign imports, boosted by misguided policies like the Minimis Provision, are crushing American manufacturing, creating job losses, and yes, keeping modern-day slave labor alive and well, both at home and abroad. Stick with me here, because we're about to uncover how tariffs and these trade policies are giving you the illusion of a great deal while driving up your costs, ruining small businesses, and contributing to global exploitation. So are you ready? Let's dive in. I want to begin with the complaints you hear about tariffs, but what's really going on. We've all heard the complaints. Tariffs are hurting consumers. Tariffs are driving up costs. We're getting the short end of the stick. But have you stopped to ask why it's all happening? Most people believe that tariffs are some kind of punishment on our beloved consumer goods or a barrier to getting cheaper products from overseas. But here's the kicker. What if I told you that it's not tariffs that are killing America's economy? It's a complete lack of fairness in how other countries play the game and our reluctance to level the playing field. Now, before you roll your eyes and shout, but tariffs hurt me at the checkout line, hear me out. While it's true that some tariffs make things more expensive for consumers in the short term, the bigger issue lies in the fact that the U.S. has given up its manufacturing capabilities to countries that use cheap labor, lax regulations, and government subsidies. And here's the real shocker. This all stems from policies like the de minimis provision, which lets foreign companies send goods into the United States tariff-free if they're worth $800 or less. On paper, it seems harmless until you realize it's flooding our market with low-quality, cheaply made products that hurt U.S. businesses. Meanwhile, we keep hearing about government waste. Yes, the same government that allows billions of dollars worth of foreign goods to enter without so much a tariff is also letting waste, fraud, and abuse run rampant in its programs. And somehow, we're supposed to believe this is all fair. This isn't a one-off incident. It's a systemic problem. So let's discuss that. The de minimis provision, how it's flooding our market with low-quality goods. Let's talk about the de minimis provision in more detail, because this is where the real damage is done. You see, the provision allows goods valued at $800 or less to enter the United States without being subjected to tariffs. What this really means is that millions of products, most of them subpar and poorly made, are entering the U.S. market every single year without any regulation or scrutiny. The numbers are staggering. $54 billion worth of product each year. Now, if you're thinking, hey, that sounds like a good deal for me, think again. Sure, that cheap foreign-made gadget or accessory may be tempting, but the reality is these goods are often poorly manufactured with inferior materials. They break down faster, need replacement sooner, and more often than not, end up in landfills, contributing to our growing environmental crisis. But there's an even darker side to all of this. What does this influx of cheap goods mean for American businesses? It's simple. they can't compete. While small manufacturers in the United States are paying American wages, abiding by American regulations, and maintaining quality standards, foreign producers are able to offer goods at a fraction of the cost. That's because their labor forces are often working for pennies on the dollar, with little to no worker protections or environmental standards. This is a modern-day slavery, and it's happening all over the world, not just in America. Countries like China, India, and Bangladesh exploiting cheap labor to produce goods that flood our market and undercut local businesses. So what are the hidden costs of cheap imports and how consumers are paying the price? Now let's talk about the real cost of these low-quality imports. Sure, you might think you're saving $1 or $2 when you purchase an $8 t-shirt or a $15 gadget, but here's the truth. It's costing you 3 times as much in the long run. American companies can't compete against these imported goods that are made for pennies on the dollar. But here's the problem. What happens when these small businesses go under? Jobs get lost, local economies suffer, and instead of having a job that helps support your community, you're stuck buying low-quality items that won't last and contribute to inflation and wage stagnation. The lower prices you're paying now are not a bargain. They're a false economy. And don't forget the environmental toll these products often come with. Huge carbon footprint, are shipped long distances, and end up contributing to our planet's increased waste problem. So you're not only stuck paying 3 times as much for a piece of junk, you're also helping prop up systems of exploitation across the globe. Nice trade-off, right? So let me briefly touch on the global trade imbalance and how the U.S. keeps subsidizing other countries. Let's zoom out and take a look at the bigger picture. The U.S. trade deficit. In 2022, America's trade deficit hit a whopping $948 billion, and the gap keeps growing. Why? Because we continue to allow foreign products into our country at unfair prices while American companies struggle to sell their products abroad. As I mentioned earlier, the U.S. government has given foreign companies a free pass, subsidizing them by allowing them to export goods into the U.S. tariff-free, while we get taxed, regulated, and even forced to give up intellectual property just to sell our products overseas. Let me be clear. America is subsidizing everyone else's economy while our own small businesses and workers are left to fend for themselves. We're sending money overseas to economies that use slave labor, don't care about human rights, and don't give a damn about our own local businesses. And for what? So we can buy cheap junk? So at this point, you must be thinking, what can you do about it? So what's the solution here? It's simple. We need to level the playing field. We need trade policies that protect American workers, American businesses, and our long-term economic health. That means reevaluating policies like the Minimis Provision and making sure American manufacturers aren't unfairly penalized when they're trying to compete globally. It also means pushing for stronger labor protections abroad so workers in places like China, India aren't being exploited for the benefit of massive multinational corporations. But here's the kicker. This is a fight we all need to join. It's not just about tariffs or trade deficits. It's about fairness. It's about making sure the jobs and opportunities in this country aren't sacrificed on the altar of cheap imports. It's about stopping modern-day slavery, not just in America, but around the world. So here's what I'm asking you to do. Start the conversation. Talk to your friends, your family, your lawmakers. Demand that they fight for fair trade policies that help protect American businesses and workers. Reach out to your representatives and tell them you want a trade policy that ensures Americans aren't subsidizing cheap labor at the expense of our future. I want to thank you for joining me today on the Business Warroom Podcast. If you learned something, if you've gotten fired up about the future of American manufacturing and small businesses, share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. Let's make sure this issue gets the attention it deserves. We've got to fight for a future where American jobs, products, and the businesses thrive, not just survive. See you next time, and keep fighting the good fight. Peace.